I'm starting to think that there's a little bit of a symmetry between this series and my Anne Boleyn necklace, because I managed to fix it last week and all of a sudden the necklace is now a plot point. Well, I wonder what's going to happen with the necklace next week if that's the case. We got to episode 3 of Becoming Elizabeth. Either Learn or Be Silent. I actually really like the title of that, because there are so many people who need to hear that. Either learn or be silent. Sit down or shut up. Believe me, I'd like to tell that to a lot of people who are like, will you shut up? I can't swear yet because we're not that deep into the video. Right, so in this episode, we have Catherine Parr finds out she's pregnant, and then she and Thomas throw a birthday party for Elizabeth in order to get Lady Jane Grey within the sight of Edward, in order for Edward to think, I'm going to marry her and she'll be my queen. But it goes very, very wrong. And then Elizabeth is caught with Thomas Seymour by Catherine Parr, and Catherine Parr sends her away. I've seen a couple of people saying that this one's worse than the other 2 episodes. Personally, I think it was slightly better, mainly because they finally got round to the catching in the act and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And on the bright side, it does mean Catherine Parr's going to die in the next episode. God, I cannot believe what they did to Catherine Parr in this. When I finish episode 4, I'm going to go straight into finishing my script for the Catherine Parr ranking, so I can get that finished as quickly as possible. Get that out in July, while the show is still airing, because I'm guessing she's going to die next week. She's going to die in childbirth. And then you can just hear what I have to say about it, and it will still be airing. See, I was quite lucky when Anne Boleyn 2021 came out, because I was still doing the Jane Seymour rankings, and I thought that series wasn't coming out till like the October of 2021, because I didn't realise they were releasing it so soon after releasing the trailer. That series was so rushed. Anyway, yeah, so the pre-credits scene is where Catherine is getting a old-timey pregnancy test with the doctor, where she has to pee in a pot, he has to mix it in wine and he has to drink it, which is ew. I'm not even sure if that was a Tudor method at the time. It might have been, I don't know. I don't know that much about Tudor medicine, apart from that whole 4 humours thing, where they thought that your body was made up of 4 humours. You got blood, pus, yellow bile and black bile, or something like that. And one of the biggest cures was to bleed you. With the women, they'd slash you along the neck to bleed you out a bit. With men, they'd slash along the groin. Yeah, if your doctor had a shaky hand, it must be very scary. And Catherine Parr's like, oh crap, I'm pregnant, this is a death sentence. And yeah, I could understand why she would think that, because that's how a lot of women felt at the time. And plus, she's in her mid-30s. She's thinking, this is my first child, and I'm in my mid-30s. I am doomed. I am bloody doomed. And Lady Jane Grey is sitting there like, which basically she says, you know, the Lord Protector's wife has had 10 children, and in a way to sort of slap down Anne Stanhope, who hasn't actually appeared in this series so far. You'd think she would. Catherine's just like, well, nothing's going to kill her. She's so spiteful, she just can't die. And then Lady Jane Grey says, oh, my mother's, you know, had me and my sisters, and she's okay. So I just have this idea that Lady Jane Grey is having a very thinly veiled attack on her own mother, because Lady Jane Grey didn't really like her mother that much, because her mother was horrible and beat her for not being a boy and for being too meek. She's just saying to Catherine, please don't be so pessimistic. You're the only nice maternal figure that I actually have, and if you died, I'd be really sad about it. One of the positives of this series is we're getting more in depth into Lady Jane Grey, because we haven't seen that in a while. Not since, like, the Sarah Jane Adventures, because there was an episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures where one of the characters went back in time. She ended up being a lady-in-waiting to Lady Jane Grey on the 9th day of her reign, and then she gives her a pep talk and buggers off back to the present, and Lady Jane Grey's like, oh, she must have been an angel. I know I don't die in vain now. Oh, sorry, the cat's here now, and he wants attention. Fine, if you want attention, you're going to sit in front of the camera and make me look good. He looks like a panda sometimes, I swear. Right, so the next scene before the opening credits is where Elizabeth is in another room. She's doing her homework, well, the closest thing the Tudors have to homework. And then Thomas comes in and he continues being a creep to her. And I'm surprised that wasn't the instance where Catherine caught them in the act, because it was It's like, how is Catherine this blind? Like, she can clearly tell that Thomas has these thoughts about Elizabeth. Got a bloody neon sign saying, "I want to bang Elizabeth," right above his head. And Catherine's just like, oh, he's so playful, isn't he? Oh my goodness. It's the scene where Thomas slashes Elizabeth's dress to pieces, but it's sort of different in this context because Thomas and Catherine are sort of pointing fun at Elizabeth for still wearing a black dress in mourning of her father. In this instance, Henry's been dead for about 1.5 years now, and they think it's time she's out of that black mourning dress and into some more colourful clothes. And in history, what happened was Catherine, Elizabeth and Thomas were romping in the garden, basically playing hide and seek. And then Catherine sort of like caught Elizabeth and sort of held her while Thomas took his sword out and slashed at her dress, slashed it to pieces. Elizabeth couldn't do anything because Catherine was holding her down. And it was supposed to be a game, but honestly it was a huge red flag for what Thomas wanted to do to Elizabeth. And in this scene it's a lot more questionable because Catherine just laughs when he sort of tears off the front and then he rips her sleeve off, and then they chase her through the hall and they pull her dress off until she's in her shift, which makes me wonder, why wasn't she wearing petticoats or stays under that? She was literally just wearing the shift and then the dress. There's more layers to Tudor garb, isn't there? And then it cuts between Elizabeth. 1 minute she's giggling and then the next minute she's absolutely terrified. She pins Thomas down on the window seat and holds a hand on his neck, and I thought that was going to start to get a little intense, where he was probably trying to take it too far, like trying to get the shift off as well, and she could have just been like suddenly reacting, being like, no, get the hell off me, and then it could have been like she was holding down too much and Thomas was actually panicking, and then Catherine would have to literally rip Elizabeth off her. But that's not what happened. It was clearly just them playing at it. But it's supposed to be some sort of playful scene, but the music is telling us that this is an ominous image. So I'm just like, pick a tone and stick with it here. Yes, and then we get the opening credits, and I knew that the credits were going to be like different for every episode because we finally get the bee necklace in the credits, like in the vine. So that just throws my whole interpretation out of control from the last episode, because now I'm guessing the bee is Anne Boleyn, obviously. So then who's the bird skull this time? Is it Robin Dudley because he's a robin? Who is the sword? Is the sword Thomas because he slashed her dress with the sword? I don't even know anymore. Do you know, Alan? No. And they are still just filming Haddon Hall at different angles and calling it a different place because clearly they have not listened to me. So clearly they have never just opened a National Trust handbook. Yeah, so I have the note, the bookmarks with me now. Okay, Kedleston, no. That's the Captain Cook Museum. Yeah, Baddesley Clinton. That's a really, really nice sort of Tudoresque place. It's got a moat and wonderful places. And in the cafe, like, the ducks are like cats. Like, you know how sometimes you sit down, a cat looks at you and they want your food? It happens, but instead it's all these little mallards. It's so cute. And this was the house I was talking about last week that I couldn't remember the name of, Packwood House. I think it's connected to the Shakespeares. I think something to do with Shakespeare's mother, Mary Arden. I can't remember, but it said something about Shakespeare in there. Maybe they had the Lord Chamberlain's men come to Packwood House and do a play for them during like times of plague when they couldn't be in London. The interior is so Tudor, it's just, oh my gosh, it's like time has stood still here. Woollerton Park would be good for the exteriors, but not for the interiors, because the interior is Nottingham's Natural History Museum, so they've got a bunch of dinosaurs from China in there. That's the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. Belton House, no, that's too modern. Cork Abbey, no, that's Baroque. Hardwick Hall, yes, that's the perfect Tudor place to film when Penshurst or Haddon Hall is taken. Bolsover, no, because that's Stuart. Although I did say the interiors in there would be good, just for like a few scenes. That's Whitby Abbey. That's the Captain Cook Museum again. Nunnington Hall, yes, I remember that. This one could be good for filming Tudor periods in, because I went there on the way back from Scarborough in September, I think, end of September. There's not got much to look at, but I think this belonged to William Parr, Catherine Parr's brother. So that would be a good place. Coton Court, yes, because this belonged to Elizabeth Throckmorton. It was involved in the gunpowder plot. There's a priest hole within a priest hole, so people would open the priest hole, they wouldn't see anything, but they didn't realise there was another priest hole, there was a fake floor, and the priest would be sitting inside the real priest hole. Hardwick again. Sometimes they've redesigned these. Sorry, I need to... Cannons Ashby, I think that's got some Tudor stuff in it. I can't remember, I haven't been there in a while. I just remember, when I went there, I just remember how hot it was. Cork Abbey again, no. Chatsworth, possibly. Brodsworth Hall, what do you think of Brodsworth? Is it too Victorian for you? Well, yes, because it says here it was built in the 1860s, so that's out. Hardwick Old Hall, that's a ruin. Belonged to Bess of Hardwick, and I think it burnt down, then they built the new one. That's the Florence Nightingale Museum. Newstead Abbey. You could possibly film a bit of Tudor stuff in Newstead Abbey, but it would stand out like a sore thumb because there is a lot of just Victorian Gothic stuff in there. Thank you, Lord Byron. Nottingham Castle, again, that's an art museum now, so it wouldn't be good to film the interiors, but if you wanted just to film a scene on Tower Hill, you could probably get away with it. Peveril Castle, that's a ruin. Haddon Hall, here we go, that's the one I got from Haddon Hall. Woollerton Park again. Clumber Park has some really nice gardens, but the house is gone because a bunch of soldiers destroyed it in World War II. Because what would happen in World War II was battalions of like the army or the air force, they take up residence in a country house and they'd usually trash the place. Rufford Abbey is like, it was a rubbish heap by the time the army were done with it. That's the Museum of Zoology in Cambridge. Scarborough Castle, also a ruin. Lyme Park, that's the version of Pemberley where Colin first jumped in the lake, and it's obviously not Tudor, so that wouldn't work either. Catherine is still a massive bitch. I don't know if it's just Jessica Rain's performance, but I just do not believe that she cares about Elizabeth at all in these. She's like Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest, where there should just be a scene where Elizabeth says, "Why did you adopt me? I want to know." And then Catherine be like, "I guess I just did it for the publicity." And I suppose that they're trying to make Catherine less sympathetic, so this whole affair with Thomas Seymour becomes more sympathetic to on Elizabeth's part, where you don't demonise her as much. At the same time, like, they seem to achieve more with the morally grey stuff in Young Bess, where Catherine Parr was still this loving stepmother to Elizabeth, someone Elizabeth couldn't afford to lose because she had had so many disappointments with her past stepmothers. And Catherine is just like, look, I care about you, Elizabeth, but I'm worried about you at the same time. And she got a more sympathetic. She got a more sympathetic portrayal. Of course, they never said she was pregnant in that. She just sort of died because she had to. And then Elizabeth goes to see Thomas, and they make out. Oh, Tetley wants to come in now. Scraping at the door. Scraping at the door. Okay, let's go let Tetley in. Okay, look who's here now. It's Tetley, purring loudly as ever. I guess she got the memo from Alan last week that he got to be in the video now. She's like, but I want to be in the video now. I want to be in the video. I'm cuter than you. Look how fluffy I am. I have eyeliner and I'm a kitty. Anyway, they're having this conversation and they start making out, and I'm just thinking, like, couldn't she at least close the door? If they're trying to be discreet, they couldn't close the door or something. And Elizabeth says, "Do you think I'm a child? Do you think I'm stupid?" And I'm like, he does not think you're a child. He thinks you're an object to be used. And there was a bit where I just had to pause and prepare myself because I was dreading what was going to come. Ugh, I should not have said that. And then when I paused, I looked at the timer and it said I was already 20 minutes in, and I'm like, where is the time going in these? And the scene ended with them kissing and it went blurry, and I was like, oh god, that never means anything good. And then someone decided they wanted a shower while I was in the middle of watching this. What? You weren't the one that had a shower. I'm not having a go at you for it. Someone decided they wanted to have a shower in the middle of me watching it, so I had to put my headphones in, and I was really pissed off about that. Tom then goes to bed and he takes off his trousers, and I do not want to see Thomas Seymour's ass. Neither does Tetley. Sorry, you didn't have to watch it, I did. And then they plan. Then he and Catherine start planning Elizabeth's 15th birthday party, and I was thinking, you're not going to live that long. Like, there's no way you're going to live that long. Like, would they be planning it and then she finds out about Elizabeth and then sends her away? But no, it turns out the timeline is just screwed up in this. So it's supposed to be 1548, and as far as we know, Elizabeth was found out and sent away by Catherine sometime in the spring of 1548, and then Catherine moved on and went to Sudeley to go and have her baby, and she died in September, a few days before Elizabeth turned 15. So the timeline's messed up. They could have just had it be Elizabeth's 14th birthday and I would have been fine with that. And then we cut to Elizabeth preparing for her birthday, and then there was this kind of really good reveal. I really liked how this bit was filmed. Let me just sort of demonstrate it for you, because I mean this is shorter, but what happened was Elizabeth got like what looked like just a simple pearl necklace out of the jewellery box, and then she asked Kat to put it on for her, and she's holding the pendant the entire time. So then obviously I can't just put this over my head because it's very short, and freshwater pearls aren't cheap. Yes, imagine like I'm holding this and then she puts it on there, and then Elizabeth takes her hand off of the necklace and we see the bee, and I was like, oh my god, like that was a really good reveal. I really like that. Yeah, it was always believed that the bee necklace was handed to Elizabeth by someone through Anne Boleyn when Anne realised, oh crap, I'm going to die, so I better send something to my daughter so she can remember me. And Elizabeth is clearly wanting to wear the bee necklace to her birthday party as a form of remembrance, but Catherine sort of guilt trips her into not wearing, well, saying not wear it. She like rearranges the necklace so it just sort of like the bee sits in here, and then like the pearls are set out along the neckline here. So the bee is hidden, but she still gets to wear it. And I thought like at some point during the celebration, maybe the bee was sort of like going to sort of rise up. Like like someone would pull on the necklace and then the bee would rise up like that, and then people like, oh, the great whore, the great whore, clutch the pearls, clutching. Yeah, another odd thing about Catherine Parr, every time she's like in a scene where she's not talking to the council or anyone in public, she walks around in her dressing gown, in the Tudor equivalent of her dressing gown. She's always in her PJs. That's just weird. Don't you have anything else to wear when you're at home? And granted, when I don't have to be anywhere, I do like to sort of lounge about in trackies and a hoodie, but I'm not the Dowager Queen of England. So if Mary had been at that party, maybe we could have had that reveal, and then Mary could have realised, oh, I see, you're not on my side at all, are you? That would have been cool. That would have been so cool. Maybe that'll happen later in the series. Then they have the party, she comes out, and then they have this sort of thing where Edward sets the lake on fire. Okay, I don't know how they did that in the Tudor era. There must have been a way to... How do you set water on fire in the Tudor era? Because they don't have the method. It's not like they have the method of Greek fire on them. In which case I can see that happening, but yeah, if this was the Roman times and they were doing it via Greek fire, that would make sense. But this isn't the Roman times; it's the Tudor era, and I don't think they have the technology to set water on fire yet, like we do. I'm guessing they just poured oil in there, and then they set it on fire. And then the next morning, you can see that all the fish have been burnt up. I was just thinking, those poor fish, and those poor frogs, and whatever else lives in the pond. And then Elizabeth is playing cards with Robert Dudley. There is not enough Robert Dudley. We needed more Robert Dudley in this. Because otherwise we only know that Elizabeth and Robert are close because we're just being told. And then we have Edward talking to Jane a little bit more. And you can see like they're smiling at each other. You can see why Edward would possibly choose Jane to be his successor. Unless we show later on it's just like, oh well, we'll just have to pick her because it's not like we have any better options. Elizabeth's pearl necklace does look a bit too shiny, a little bit too new, considering that these pearls have probably been like hidden in the bottom of her jewellery box for like years and years and years, and this is probably the first time she's been able to bring it out. What do you want to do, Telly? No, you can't go on the desk. Can't go on the desk. Desk is not for you. Continue purring into the microphone by all means. Yeah, Elizabeth's pearls look a bit too shiny and new. I had this problem in the 2003 Other Boleyn Girl where they looked... Anne Boleyn's pearls looked a bit too plastic. But then again, that was really cheap production, so I can understand that. And then Elizabeth sort of starts playing the game a bit by making Edward be turned off by Lady Jane Grey by putting Jane on the spot and making her sing. And, oh gosh, so many traumatic flashbacks of being a teenager and having to sing in front of a crowd when you don't want to. It's year 8 music class all over again. God. I remember being in that position, standing there with tears in my eyes, not wanting to sing and being forced to by the teacher. She was a bitch. She was such a bitch. And then the next week she's all like, oh, and I'm like, do not touch my face. Do not touch my face or I will bite you. I didn't say that, but I wish I had. You can't be so horrible to me one week and then think I'm going to be alright with you being nice to me the next week. Yeah, and then Jane gets so nervous as she runs off, and Edward's just like, that was shit. That was so shit. And he's starting to sound like a kid that's gotten onto Call of Duty and then starts spouting all those swear words, and then he gets banned in 5 seconds. But yeah, Edward's acting more like an adolescent in this, which makes sense because he's very immature. But I'm going to use that line. I'm going to use that line in a future video someday. And then, because Jane embarrassed her family, Henry Grey is now beating her. And Elizabeth comes in and she stops him. Before this scene, Robert took her aside and said that was a really horrible thing to do. Like putting Jane on the spot like that. You were doing it deliberately to try and sabotage your step-parents. Oh, sorry, totally setting off my hay fever. So much hair in the atmosphere. How long can you purr for? You seem to have been purring for the last 20 minutes. And Elizabeth realises that she's been a bit too cruel to Lady Jane. She hasn't treated Lady Jane Grey like a friend. And she feels bad when she sees her being beaten by her father. Just because she made a mistake, she doesn't deserve to be beaten. And then after Henry Grey's left, she offers Jane a new dress. And it's almost like there was a chance for them to be friends there. But then that night, while Elizabeth's asleep and the people are still downstairs, Thomas comes into her room and he starts putting the moves on her again. And luckily, Elizabeth's being a bit more conscious about the way Thomas is treating her. And she constantly pushes him off. And it's at this bit where her shift is mostly open. I don't think you saw her breasts. I hope you didn't. But practically with nothing on. And Catherine came in and saw that Thomas was sort of sitting very, very close to her like that. And she's like, oh shit. And I was just like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Catherine. I really didn't want to see how far that was going to go. And just before that, so Elizabeth had sympathy points. Elizabeth had pushed Thomas away and Thomas was like, oh my God, why are you so uptight? But I was worried it was going to go too far from there. And then we cut to the next morning and the house is an absolute mess. Obviously that's a metaphor for how everything's messed up. And Catherine is finally seeing that there is something very wrong with her marriage and her relationship with her stepdaughter. We cut to a scene with Mary where she's hurt that she was not invited to her sister's party. And she's thinking, like, clearly my sister does not love me. Clearly I am alone in this. And it's another great Mary scene. Well, I'm guessing that the 8th episode is probably going to end with Edward dying and Lady Jane Grey being declared queen, or it's going to end with Lady Jane Grey being dethroned and Mary coming in. And everyone's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? There's a Catholic on the throne now. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? The only way I would be okay with a second season is to see more Romola being Mary, because I really like this version of Mary. I'm hoping to see more of that, like after we've gotten rid of Thomas and Catherine. There'll be no silly forced romance. Oh my God, I'm covered in cat hair. Ugh. they're shedding because it's hot and they've got long hair. And then we cut to a Privy Council meeting that's being held in Chelsea. And again, there is groundwork being laid here. So Edward is being urged by Catherine and Thomas to be more assertive and be all like, I do not want Bishop Gardiner on the Privy Council. By the way, Bishop Gardiner got released, but it's really not important to the plot of this episode. So I do not want that man on my council. I do not want you to tell me what to do because I'm the king. And then all of this, him going like, I'm the king, I'm the king, I'm the king. It was putting me in the mind of that scene in the end of season 3 of Game of Thrones where Joffrey's being all like, I am the king, you just hid under Castle Rock when my father won the war. And you have Tywin Lannister saying, any man who has to say he's the king is no true king. Unfortunately, this version of Edward Seymour isn't as eloquent as Charles Dance, but he does sort of he does manage to put Edward in his place by saying like, no, you are still a child. You are too immature to understand the intricacies of running a kingdom. I was appointed protector, so technically, yes, I'm the one in charge. You are not fit to rule on your own yet. You're still a child. And believe me, this is going to come back to haunt him, because I'm guessing in 2 or 3 episodes' time, it's going to be the coup against Edward Seymour, and Edward the King is going to be all like, he said I was a child. Well, can a child do this? Call me a child now, Uncle. That is why I did this in a cheap little notebook that I stole from work. I am sick of the swearing in this series, though. I really am. Every bloody scene is F word this and F word that. Again, you're trying to sound like a bloody Twitch streamer who's 13 years old and playing Call of Duty. So these people think they're Peter Capaldi swearing every other word. I mean, not Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. There was was it The Thick of It, where Peter Capaldi was like known for just swearing in every other sentence?
Well, you know what, Howard? She's not bent, either in the sense of being corrupt or being gay. And by the way, that's an incredibly homophobic headline, you massive poof.
And then, after that scene, Catherine confronts Thomas about the incident last night with Elizabeth, and that's when she says, I'm pregnant. I thought Thomas already knew, because we found this out at the start of the episode. So I thought she would have told him off screen, and because there was a bit where she says, I have news, but they were too busy stripping Elizabeth of her dress. And then she talks to Elizabeth, and she's all like, you know, what happened? And Elizabeth's like, nothing happened. And I'm guessing she's saying it because she knows she's going to get sent away if she said something did happen. Again, it's not as good as this, as I say, it's not as good as the scene in Young Bess, but there was the scene in Young Bess where she gave Elizabeth an option to say, like, say you don't love my husband and we can just pretend nothing happened. But if you do love him, then you're going to have to leave because we can't be doing this. And then Elizabeth says, I do love him though. And she's like, well, you'll have to go back to Hatfield then. And then that's how that ends. But it was showing that version of Catherine to be a bit more sympathetic towards Elizabeth, saying like, you know, we can't be doing this. This is just not right. But in this one, it's like, I don't believe Catherine really wants to protect Elizabeth in this. I think she's just jealous and wants to get her out of the way. So then they pack up a carriage, and I was very confused as to whose carriage it was supposed to be, because could it be Catherine going off to Sudeley? Could it be Elizabeth? But then Elizabeth comes out and she's not really dressed for travelling. She hasn't even got a hood on. She'd bungled into the carriage either way, and they set off, and it's cut with scenes of Elizabeth and Thomas in the throes of lovemaking. And I was thinking, wait, is that actually happening, or is that just happening in Elizabeth's head? Is that just a fantasy? So I've literally no idea, because it would have you believe that that they didn't, or did they do it in that scene where everything went blurry? Oh, it's so confusing. I guess we'll find out next week if they did. Yeah, and then the episode ends. It was a bit uneventful, well, I say a bit uneventful. It was not as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I was so worried about how far Thomas was going to get before Catherine caught them. And again, I'm still liking the scenes that don't involve Thomas and Catherine and Elizabeth. I'm liking the scenes around it. And it's a bit weird, because this series is supposed to be called Becoming Elizabeth. But I'm preferring the scenes that don't have Elizabeth in them, that have her far away. So I'm trying to think, is there a TV series where that's the case, where it's just like, this is supposed to be about this one character, but everyone prefers the story of the other character? I suppose with How I Met Your Mother, we actually prefer watching Barney trying to better himself. I'm still not keen on this series, but hopefully once Catherine and Thomas are out the way, it will get a lot better. Just wondering, once Catherine's out the way, who are they going to put in with the sex scenes next? I really don't want to know. Yeah, I didn't actually record that long today. I'm glad, because I've had a bit of a long day already. I had to go to town and get some stuff, and it was just really busy. There's too many people about. I can't stand having too many people about. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit of withdrawal symptoms, because Obi-Wan Kenobi's over now. Got to wait for the next Star Wars series to come out. I guess I could watch Angel. I have bought a new camera, but it's not arrived yet, so I didn't want to have to charge up my camcorder for this, so I'm just using my webcam at the moment, and the quality is so much better on this. Like, I'm looking at it on the screen right now, and I see the in front of camera stuff I did on my I did for the Titanic videos, and the Titanic video is so bloody blurry, and that's HD as well. But this one, this new camera I'm getting, it's got 60 FPS, so you know it's good, and I can take it out, and like I can strap it to my head, and I can go cycling with it. We can go cycling around lovely little beauty spots. It'll be good for like getting B-roll footage, so if I'm talking about something but I don't really have the visuals for it, I can just include footage of like me cycling around the park. Anyway, let's hope the next episode is a bit more interesting. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss the vlog for that, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, please leave a like and put in a comment, because that really does help me with the algorithm, because the algorithm is evil. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you to my wonderful patrons who have been supporting me throughout this. And we'll come back to you next week. It'll be in July, and we'll get everything done. And I might have some new, maybe not by next week, but I'm getting some new glasses. Let me give a big thank you to my King and Queen patrons before Tetley starts screaming or something. Before Tetley starts getting too agitated and scratches the door for me to let her out. So thank you to Anastasia Gracia, Alison Cuff, Larissa, Lady Eternal and Leslie Williams. You guys are what's keeping me going. You are amazing. Who knows what the future holds.